like the wave with your hand. Go with the flow. Go with the flow. How are you
My
doing?
hand probably should be a stop today, not a go with the flow, right?
What makes you say that? A stop instead of flow? Why?
Oh, what's happening in our world and in the
Mm,
United States today, especially,
mhm.
for anybody that is paying attention and aware, it's been a pretty intense couple of weeks. So as we talked about last week on the show,
Yeah.
and this week it just keeps coming. And I think we mentioned last week how folks want us to be in overwhelm and fear and paralyzed. And so really thank you. Before the show, we were doing some heart math. One of
Yeah.
our previous guests taught us that tool. And so, just really being present with our nervous systems. And in the midst of these challenging times where we need to stand up and show up and say things, how to be present in our bodies and able to move forward.
Yeah. And I know we need to do our intro, but that's what next week is about. I was looking at the shows that we have coming up and how to be in your body. I didn't real on an everyday basis is next week, right? I didn't
Hmm.
realize how many women and people struggle with that. So heart math is great if you need to get your heart rate down. And Lori Ives she was a great guest, and I had a really good time going to that class. So I was grateful to be able to bring that tool to our little pre-show talk. But you ready to get started?
Yeah, let's get started with our official intro so we can
Yeah.
get this guest up here sooner than later because I am so excited about this conversation today.
It's gonna be good. Okay, y'all. I'm Shannon Mitchell, a Black millennial entrepreneur, an Amazon best-selling publisher, author, and all-natural product manufacturer. I'm a champion for your natural self-care, sustainable business care, and overall wellness.
Hi, y'all. I'm Christine Gotro, a white social justice advocate, an international speaker, coach, Amazon bestselling author and publisher, and dancing social worker who helps you upgrade your self and community care.
Yes, together we are a podcast rooted in the 8 dimensions of wellness and the co-founders of Women Connected in Wisdom community.
And we like to get together every week for intentional conversations about how to be wise in business, relationships, and wellness. How do we do this?
Very intentionally. Very intentionally, yes. What else was coming up for you, with what we were talking about at the beginning? Was there something else you wanted to say?
Mm, so much I could say, but I may wait till our guest gets on so it's a
Okay.
fully interactive conversation.
Mm, mhm.
Yeah, I on our break, because on Wednesdays, our listeners know it's our production day. So
Yeah.
often we're working and we take a short break. I mean, we believe in our self-care in the midst of our work. So,
Mm,
I was trying to call senators on break and not being able to get through. So
mm.
emailing and
Good job.
yeah, there's protests going on all across the nation today, and for years, I've been a part of that, and, my body, our listeners know from last week, my back is out, so my body was like, "Yeah, you are not, that is not happening today."
Yeah.
So, my part of my thoughts are out there with friends and colleagues and, yeah, just
Yeah. And that it brings up the rest is resistance for me. You taking
mhm,
care of yourself is part of that too. And we know that, you're about to take this trip and continue your community care. And so care for you, care for your community. You're still doing
right.
the good work.
And sometimes it doesn't feel like enough, right?
No,
And I know, yeah.
Oof. My
Ah!
goodness. My goodness, y'all. And so when you talk about that, that's how I felt when I got this news this week, Christine, of one of the affiliates missing with Shaylo
Yeah,
Glow.
you
So,
told me.
right? So y'all, if you know Jamel, right, one of the affiliates for Shaylo Glow is missing in Atlanta, has been missing for months. And I found out 48 hours ago. So when we talk
Yeah,
about emotional and mental well-being, I was like, not okay at work. It's crazy.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll start reaching out to all our connections and seeing
Yeah.
what we can do. But thanks for
Hmm.
shouting his name out
Yeah.
on the show. And we will put a link to the flyer in our show notes too. So our
Mhm.
listeners, if you are listening after we're live or you're driving, that you can circle back around and check that out, especially if you're in Atlanta, since we're
Yeah.
local to Atlanta. That would
Yeah.
be helpful.
And I was just thinking about the dream of Shaylo Glow, um, people being taken care of. Yes, females
Mhm.
usually use shea butter and oils and sugar scrubs, but it's not just for the females, it's for the whole
Mhm.
family.
Mhm.
So, him being well taken care of, making money from the company, having enough money to take
Mhm.
care of ourselves. This is the whole goal that I wrote about in volume 2. We're getting ready to write volume 3, but unmitigated financial freedom is the goal. And any way I see that not happening for people hurts my heart. So,
Mm.
how do we maintain, we talk about maintenance, right? How do we maintain our emotional and mental well-being when heartbreaking things are going on? We're celebrating over here, different things are moving. What do you
Mhm.
do on a daily basis? Those deep breaths, that heart math,
Right?
water, sunshine, prayer. Yes,
Right?
need to stay on the list.
All the things, and I know everybody I've been talking to, for a couple of months has been doubling down on
Yeah.
those grounding practices, especially.
Mm,
Like, what are the things that are keeping us centered and grounded? And when we get off, when we start to spiral or spin, I've been there. Even just
mhm,
this morning when you and I were talking, like,
mm,
whoop, bring it back in.
mhm,
Um, that, what can we go back to?
mhm.
Because they want us to be confused and scared and not able to function, and we got to function. I was reading Chop Wood Carry Water, which is a Substack I follow,
Okay.
and she was giving the image of a buffalo.
Mm,
So buffaloes in a storm, in a blizzard,
mm,
face the blizzard,
mm,
and they don't turn away from the storm, they don't hide, they
mm,
face the blizzard and
mm,
they go forward. And
mm,
she said it often looks painful, it does not look easy, and it looks slow,
mm.
right? But just that image alone, right? When you think about, I have actually a buffalo picture on my wall now that I think about it, because yeah. So that image of strength and sustainability and using all of ourselves basically is what one of my indigenous friends taught me
Yeah.
about buffalo. And yeah, it's an image that's sticking with me today after reading that.
Yeah, that reminds me of what I was thinking about sharing, that fear is not as big as you think it is when you look it in its face. So
Hmm.
what is the situation? Just whether it's a difficult conversation with somebody, whether whatever it is, like look at it so you can know what's actually going on and then go through it. And so
Right.
that's been my thing because before I wasn't looking a lot like, I'm ignoring people, but we you have to pay attention, you know what I mean? You have to know what's going on. You have to be aware, like I said, when we were doing heart math, like the awareness and the ease,
Hmm.
um, because it's difficult to do both sometimes.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
and that staying embodied piece, like we're talking about emotional and mental wellness today, and
Yeah.
that piece of being present and in your body.
Mhm.
I think I shared with listeners last week when we were checking in and talking about how I injured my back. I mean, part of that was it was a really difficult situation and I zipped out of my body. And I was
Mhm.
telling somebody that this week and they were like, zipped out of your body. I'm like,
I was
do
gonna
y'all,
ask you.
have y'all not,
No,
has that not
explain it.
happened to you before?
Explain it.
Um, it's like, I used to do it all the time when I was a kid. And since I've
Really?
been doing interplay and since I've been more embodied in practices,
Mhm.
I don't do it. But it's kind of that disassociation. Like when something's really hard, I always kind of talk about it like you're three steps behind yourself, or you're not present fully in the moment. You've kind of separated out a little
Okay.
bit to be able to
Okay.
survive sometimes, or whatever the situation is. A lot of when it's trained as a clinical therapist, like a lot of folks that have been through abusive situations or trauma, it's
Yeah.
a survival mechanism.
Yes.
And one of the gifts of interplay and embodiment is I just don't do it hardly ever
Mm,
anymore. Like it's not, so it took me by surprise. And I think I told you I didn't even realize I was hurt until I tried to walk up my step and I was like,
mhm,
wait a second, how did I
mhm,
not know I was hurt?
mhm,
Right. And so
mhm.
so that piece of that emotional and mental wellness of staying present and staying in our bodies, even when it's a challenge, right?
Yeah.
And the tools to do that. So should we talk
Mhm,
about our definition and get our
mhm.
guest up here? I am
Let's
so
do it.
excited to have this conversation today.
It's gonna be great.
All right, y'all. Emotional and mental wellness is about being aware and intentional of our feelings in all situations. It includes having the capacity and tools to handle and express these emotions in a healthy manner and the ability to learn and grow from experience. Emotional well being encourages autonomy, useful decision making skills, and striving toward good mental health.
Mhm. What stands out for you this week?
Striving.
Mm,
Sometimes we may not always have it, or the circumstances, like may have moments, or we may have times that life, we know the last 2 years, like with grief and loss, and that sometimes it's that striving that we may not always have it, that but we're striving towards it.
yeah.
What about for you?
Yeah, mine is in a healthy manner,
Hmm.
because for those of us, for the listeners who are new, right? Christine said 2 years. When you say 2 years, I start counting back.
Right.
It's 2 years with you and walking through the situation with your dad and your family,
Hmm.
and then it was 3 years for my best friend and her
Right.
mom and her and the house that sat her for 3 years trying to figure out
Hmm.
after her transition. Like, it's crazy. It's a blessing to have to figure out a house, but for 3 years, Lord, that's a long time.
Hmm.
And then my mom passed away right before that, and she was sick for years, and it's
Hmm.
like, oh yeah, it started in 1993 when I was born,
Right.
like it started
Right.
in 1993. So when we talk about mental and emotional wellness, what I've learned, having more sophisticated levels of adulting now, having responsibilities for other people's taxes and our teams and quarterly stuff and all this stuff is, oh, this is what the adults weren't telling the children. That there's always stuff going on. Somebody's in the hospital.
Hmm.
This happened at work. Dinner didn't happen. Everybody's hungry. There's always this stuff, and balancing, like we say, right, or handling all of it is the difficult part of adulting.
Right. Next
Hmm.
level adulting
Yeah,
is
really.
what I call it.
Yeah.
Next level.
It is, it is, and y'all, sometimes we need help with these levels, right? You need coaches, you need
Mhm.
experts. So our expert guest today is Madison Butler. Are you okay if I go ahead and read her bio and bring her up our stage?
Please.
Okay, y'all. So Madison Butler is a New Englander at heart, but moved to Austin in 2017. Her work is focused around creating equitable spaces and creating scalable strategies to achieve psychological safety. She's an outspoken advocate for mental health, removing the stigma around trauma, DEI, and the ability to be a human at work. She is passionate about facilitating hard conversations through storytelling, data, and tough empathy. She has a background in talent development and attraction paired with attraction paired with a deep knowledge of DEI and culture. Help us welcome to the stage Madison Butler. Hi,
Oh
Maddie.
my gosh, we're so excited you're here.
I'm so excited to be here.
Mm,
Welcome, welcome.
yeah. So when you think about emotional and mental wellness and how you help your clients and what you are really amazing at and the impact that you've had, what do you think about first?
So, I think for me, I think one of the things that is one of the worst spots of corporate America is that you're expected to be a robot. You're expected to come in, send your happy little emails from 9 to 5,
Mhm.
regardless of what's going on, as if you get to put that stuff down. And so for
Right.
me, a big piece of emotional wellness as a leader is understanding that your team will go through a host of different things because lifes and it lifes at you quick. And all of that impacts how you show up, right? Like I think COVID is the example I use the most often because we were all kind of going through the same thing at the same time, like collectively as an entire
Mhm.
world. And all of us were scared. There were so many unknowns. There were so many new things, working remote while balancing kids, while balancing trying to just like not collapse under having to lice all your groceries and all of this, and all of that impacted how I showed. But then
Mhm.
there's also the micro stuff, right? I would say that is more collective, but then there's divorce, there's sick parents, there's financial worries, there's all of these different things that impact how you show up to work. And for me, truly embodying emotional wellness, at least at the corporate level, means allowing people to experience that and knowing that it inherently impacts how they show up and performance. I think if we all better understood our humans, we would better understand how they perform and have a little more grace when things don't go perfectly.
Right.
Very well said.
Shannon and I were having the conversation. You want to go
Mhm.
first, Shannon?
No, go ahead. What were you gonna
Oh,
say?
before the show, Maddie, we were talking about, especially in corporate America and the federal government right now, with them. Well, first of all, let me say, Happy Black History Month, y'all. Like, it's all
Yes,
year long, but
that part.
we do celebrate it on
We
Women
do.
Connected in Wisdom, and no matter what comes down, saying that we no longer celebrate. So it was interesting because we were doing some research, and it was talking about how this mandate has come down for all federal employees to no longer celebrate any identity groups, and that any groups that have been going like there. I was reading about one of the LGBT groups that was where was that at, Shannon, when we were talking about it?
We were
It
talking about the federal organizations and the list of holidays, the identity something holidays that they called it,
Right. But basically, this
celebrating.
group has been going on for 30 years. And
Mhm.
all of a sudden, the mandate is gone. You cannot do any diversity, equity, and inclusion stuff at work, period. Um, and so we were talking about that ahead of the show, Maddie, because we were like, this is who we are as humans, just what you said about corporate America. All this is going on in the world, and you're expected to show up at work and not affect you, or it not right. It's insane.
Oh, for sure.
So
I mean, I think for me, the first time that I recognized how wild it was for me was during George Floyd, where I was like trying to show up to meetings and be absolutely normal. And then I would get off meetings and then I would sob. And then I would be like, okay, hello, hi everyone. Like everything's great. And I had this moment of like, what am I doing? Like, how inauthentic is it for me to show up that way? But also, how wild is it for anyone to expect me to show up like everything is like rainbows and butterflies? I mean, I remember after January 6th, like literally on January 7th at 8 a.m., I joined an all hands for the company I worked at. And the CEO just didn't say anything. And so I felt like I had to. I was like, hey, like things are really weird. If you need to like step away or like take a moment, take a breath, like please do that. And I was like, why are we pretending that like the world isn't literally on fire? And that now feels like eons ago and even minimal compared to what we're seeing day after day here. And, I think the intention, I had this conversation on my live earlier. The intention is for us to feel fear, right? They win when we feel scared. And they know that it is scarier when we don't talk about it, when we don't find spaces in community to have collective conversation. And so for them, it benefits us to come in and send our happy little emails from 9 to 5 and, be crumbling on the inside, but be strong on the outside.
wow. I'm stuck on the happy little emails. Best Shannon, right? Yeah, I hear you. I definitely hear you on that. So when we talk about the definition that we read, right, and how to do this in a healthy way, because sometimes, I will say all the time, if it's a difficult situation, it's difficult to do that. But it is important if we are at work in certain places to be authentic, like your book talks about, right? And I look forward to getting into your book, and also be healthy for the place that you are, so you're not causing more harm. So you're not, um, how do I say it? S Let's say it like this. Sometimes when stuff is going on, I might it's like you're not being specific on what's actually going on if you have not processed it. So instead of going off on somebody, right, that might happen at work, how do you walk your clients through how to do it in a healthy way so you're still authentic? You're like, hey, this just happened. The emails will be sent. They might not be sent by 3. They might be sent by 5. Like, how do you walk people through that?
So, I think all of this is top down stuff, right? So, as a leader, you want to mirror the behavior that you expect. And so, I think that means as a leader, you have to be willing to be really vulnerable and you have to admit when you don't have it all together. Like, I, as a leader, let my team know when I need to step away, when I'm having a crappy day, when I need a mental health day. And I don't hide that. And I think that's really important because as a leader, sometimes it feels like you have to, whether you're a CEO or a manager or whatever it is, it feels like A, you have to have all the answers, and B, you have to be indestructible. But at the end of the day, I'm just a human who like, this is my job. right? And that is just such a little blip on the map of who I am as a person. And so when I'm coaching my clients, it's so much around how we model these behaviors. Because at the end of the day, right, if I show up to my team, I never take time off, I never step away, I come to work when I'm having the worst days, that's what my team thinks they have to do as well. And that's not fair to them. You know, I talk about it a lot. Like one of the only really bad reviews I've ever got was from my current CEO, who's like, "You're really bad at taking time off." And it made me realize that when I'm bad at taking time off, I don't give my team the space and permission to take time off because they see me not doing it. And so when I'm talking to my clients about that, first, you have to give the space. Like I will never be the person that says, like, go ahead, risk your job, because the onus is on organizations to create these spaces to allow people to be human. And so teaching people how to communicate that is on leadership, because leadership has to be in tune with what they need in order for them to be able to take in what other people need. If I don't know what I need as a leader, there is no way that I can manage anyone else's needs. And so as leaders, as organizations, as people who lead companies, like you have to be in touch with your own mental health. Otherwise, you're going to ruin everyone else's.
So true. So true.
And what this reminds me of is, who taught us this statistic, Christine? Was it Catherine Bell
Oh
that
yeah,
said
I know which
10% of
statistic
leaders?
yes,
Maddie,
less than 10% of leaders. You go for it, Shannon.
less than
Tell them.
10% of leaders are self-aware because we're taught to not think about our own needs, right? So less than 10% are thinking like that. And that's why we feel like the robot word keeps coming up, right? I would love for you to go more in detail about that. When you say robots, outside of happy little emails between 9 to 5, what is it specifically that you're like, hey, this isn't human? Hey, this can move based on the context. Hey, think about this when you're thinking about your time off.
So, I think the robot thing for me really comes into the idea that we expect people to be a certain kind of way at work in order to be deemed worthy of a paycheck, worthy of a team, worthy of a job. And when in actuality, humans are so multidimensional. Me today may not be the me tomorrow simply because maybe I'm bloated. Maybe my hair didn't do the thing I needed it to do today, but like I'm less happy today than I was yesterday. And
Right.
it is so normal for humans to flex that way. But
Hmm.
especially as a Black woman, I am expected to show up every day, warm and fuzzy, smiling, giggling, happy as a clam, regardless of what's going on in my life. And so the more marginalized your identity is, the more you're expected to kind of fall into this box of show up, be palatable, be the person they think you have to be. And you can't really stray from it, because the minute you stray from it, you're the angry Black woman. You're passive aggressive, you're angry. When you may not be any of those things, you're just not as warm and fuzzy today as you might have been yesterday. And that for me is the human element, because I don't expect my friends to be the same every single day. I don't expect my partner to be the same every single day. Why would I expect my coworkers to be the same every single day? Especially when we spend, in reality, as much time with them as we do with our friends, as we do with our partners, as we do with our family. You should know how often people's moods change, and it's not reflective of you. It's not reflective of how much they like their job. It's just human nature that not every day is the same and not every day is great. And you might not even have anything big going on. Just some days you're grumpy, and that's okay.
I love that. I love just an acknowledgement of our humanness, right?
Hmm.
And that some days we're grumpy. Yes. It's so simple, but it's so true. And as women, and especially for y'all as Black women, the standards are just ridiculous of how that we're in this narrow little box that we're supposed to show up just this way.
Hmm. And that's why I've been working over the few years of my communication, the healthy communication, whether it's
Mhm.
emails, whether it's conversations, both, a plethora of things. And what helps me is nailing it down to the policies and procedures, not to take it out of the humanness, but to put it in the context of what you guys are saying that you understand. Let me put it in your language that these things are not going to happen. And I'm not going to be able to show up for the team to hit these things if this doesn't happen, or if it's a difficult conversation. Um, I was reminded this week of a conversation I had when I was going through kitchen manager training the first time. And this gentleman had been a general manager before and no longer was a general manager, was super excited to learn from him, learn everything a general manager would be, that would have front of mind in the kitchen. And those conversations didn't happen. And I watched him actively set up somebody else with tools that he could keep and all this stuff. And I'm sitting here like, I'm waiting for you to follow up with me on my training questions. But at the end of my training, there was this huge episode. He was so upset. And I said, well, you and I never walked through that. So if you and I didn't walk through it, you're expecting somebody else to walk me through it. And if everybody else is doing that, then nobody's teaching me what I'm supposed to know. So yes, I'm about to get out of training and there's things that you guys have not had conversations about. And so trying to work through how to have those conversations has been something that I've been weaving. But in order for me to be consistent is what you're talking about, Christine. It's maybe I need to double on my self-care. Maybe it is time off. Yesterday that was requested. Sometimes there's not space for that, right? How do you give space for yourself in an organization that doesn't have space for you to do that? Take
Oof.
deep breaths, right? Tap in with the team that you do have, that you built within the team. And my team has been amazing at supporting me, just like we've supported Christine through her stuff, and she supported me through mine. And those ebbs and flows will need to continue to happen. And that's why we talk about communication in our books.
Right. Maddie, I want to hear about your new book. It's on
Yes.
pre-order.
Yeah,
Already
it
ordered
is.
my copy.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
so tell us about Let Them See You and why you wrote it and what we need to know about it.
Yeah, so Let Them See You is kind of like the culminations of all of the things I want to leave in my legacy, which is realistically, if you ask me why I do what I do, it's because I believe that work and life should suck less. And I think work and life would suck less if we talked more openly about the experiences of humans and how they are shaped not only by our work experiences, but by the leaders we have. And so this book is really about, as a leader, how do you unpack all of your stuff to not cause people more trauma? And not saying that your own trauma is not valid, because it certainly is, but you are certainly also responsible for how you treat the people who come next. And, I think there's two versions of this story, which is like, I've had really bad leaders and I never want to be that person. And I've had really bad leaders and I don't know how to be anyway but that person. And so really thinking about how do you unpack all of this stuff and how do you separate your stuff from the stuff that makes you feel a lot of shame, because there is that, right? As you're unpacking all of the BS that you've experienced that has made you who you are, you've done some stuff that you are not proud of. And that's okay, but it's really hard to look that person in the eye and not feel anger, not feel shame, not feel like, okay, well, I'll just close this because it's easier to not look than to look it right in the eye. And so really think about how you own all parts of you. Because when we think about authenticity, sometimes it's really wrapped up to us in this warm, fuzzy butterfly kind of way, right? Like it's your blue hair, it's your tattoos, it's Pride Month, it's Black History Month. But real authenticity is all of it, right? It is your best moments. It is your worst moments. It is the best thing you've ever done. It is also the worst thing you've ever done. And knowing that none of those things are definitive of who you are. You're a human who will do good and bad things for the rest of your life. As a leader, as a partner, as a friend, as a family member. But how do you use those things to move you forward rather than hold you back? So that's kind of the gist of the whole book. It's really about leaders. And again, because I really believe that, like, I can't tell people to go be off and I can't tell people to go be authentic if their company doesn't provide space for that. Because at the end of the day, we go to work to do what? Pay our bills, pay our mortgages, like exist under a capitalistic structure that we are forced to live in. And so I will never tell anyone to risk their safety or risk their livelihood. But what I am trying to do is dismantle the way companies operate from the inside out.
So when you think about, I like to do like dream world scenarios, right? In a dream world, what a healthy company culture would look like. What comes up for you?
Oh God, that's what a dream scenario. So for me, it really is just the idea that people should get to do what they love. Because at the end of the day, we have to work. The majority of us have to work. We're not here because we like want to be here. Not saying I don't love my job, but would I do it for free? No. Would I rather be butt naked on a boat? Yes, but I am not. And so if I have to do this thing, why should it be the main topic of therapy for me? Why should it be the thing that I'm scared about on Sunday night? And so giving people the gift of work that is simply just work. It is the thing that you do. It does not define you, but it also does not hold you back. It does not tell you who you need to be. It does not expect you to be anyone but who you are. So a dream work scenario for me is people just getting to show up and do what they do without fear of, did I laugh hard enough? Shit, was my hair too blue? Was I too gay? Was I too fat? Am I too old? Like taking all of that out of work, because how much better do people perform if they are not constantly thinking about, am I good enough? And so it's
So
not
much.
about, a dream culture as much as it's about, why do we have these expectations when at the end of the day, they're just here to do a thing. Let people just do the thing. And if they're not causing anyone harm, which they're not, then what's the problem?
Right. So that's what I think about when I think about psychological safety, right? When you say psychological safety, what where do you go with it?
It's exactly that, right? Like the freedom to be human, the freedom to be exactly who you need to be in that moment, and knowing that that ebbs and flows. Madison today may not be Madison tomorrow, and that's still authentic. I think people get this idea that like once you've been one version of yourself, um, you have to stay that version. Like I think one of the things that I was really nervous about is like, so right now I have a white male partner, and I was like really nervous to tell people that, because I've always been this like very out and queer person. And I remember telling one of my friends that, and he was like, well, your whole brand is authenticity, so why are you nervous? And I was like, because that was not on my bingo card. And people think that you have to be this version of you forever, when in actuality, like identity is so incredibly fluid, as well as emotion, as well as how you exist, as well as the circumstances in which you exist in. And if we don't allow people to ebb and flow that way, then we do them a disservice.
Right. So true. I just I was reading something the other day about how people view us as far as our identity, like that, or the role, or how they see you is often how they knew you at a certain time or a certain age. Like that we get stuck in people's heads as this is who they are. And nobody's with us 24/7, even our partners, right? That they're not. So those pieces of us that change and grow, it's yeah. I have such curiosity also, like if we slow down enough and take the time to really check in with ourselves, to like do those checks about, okay, where am I in this moment with this? Because the world is going so fast right now.
100%. And I think, that's one of the things, right? Like I can't expect everyone in my life to meet new versions of me and accept them open arms if I haven't done that with myself. Like you have to stop and check in on who you are in the moment, because you're going to meet so many different versions of you over the course of your life. I've lived so many lives at this point, that it's like hard to believe. And I've had to invite everyone in with grace, even the ones that made me uncomfortable, even the past versions that make me angry, because I'm deserving of that. Like I am my oldest friend, my oldest home, the person that I will love the longest. And I don't benefit myself by locking versions of me outside of the door.
Okay, say that one more time for the people in the back.
Well, you're going to meet many versions of yourself. You are your oldest home, your longest friend, the person you will love the longest on earth. And you don't benefit yourself by locking versions of you outside of the door.
Whew.
I had to think about
It's
it.
been multiple poems. It's been multiple poems throughout the show, yeah.
Right?
That was another one, yeah.
Ah,
So
I
And in
love
full
that line.
authenticity, I'm going to plug my computer in right now. So you're going to see me step
okay,
away, because it's
Okay,
dying
no
right
we got
worries.
now.
you.
We'll
No
talk
problem.
while you're doing that. We'll talk
Yeah.
while you're doing that. Not locking versions of yourself outside the door.
Mhm.
Woo, woo. I'm gonna have to sit with that one,
Okay.
because we've been taught to, like the ones that it
Mhm,
may not be acceptable or may not have fit in this box or that
mhm,
box.
mhm.
That is a powerful way to look at it.
Yeah. And I've been thinking about it recently, reading the book you gave me, B 2.0. And it's like, okay, who am I intentionally changing into? I'm intentionally changing into somebody who gets her taxes done early, somebody who sends their teams their tax stuff early, somebody, I didn't used to be that person. Like, this is who I want to be. So, including all the different versions and also the struggle and let's say like the beautiful struggle of each part. I was watching this video earlier about a butterfly on Instagram, and this woman was talking about how the butterfly's wings get their strength by beating against the cocoon. And so if somebody were to see a butterfly coming out of the cocoon and try to help it, you would actually, you would make it so that it couldn't even carry its body. So um, that's what I love about your work, Maddie, with trauma. And I would love to talk more about how you help people with their relationship with trauma. I heard you say that, things work for your benefit. I think about post traumatic growth with that. What do you think about it, and how do you help those that you talk to?
So, I think the thing about trauma is regardless of how you've experienced it, I think you feel some shame and some guilt around it because there's just no getting around it. Like you feel like at some point it was your fault. And that must define who you are. Like you must have been soft or you must have been weak. And, I talk really openly. I was in a really abusive relationship for quite a long time. And it was really hard for me to unpack that how someone treats me is not a reflection of me. And it doesn't mean that I was too weak or too soft or too naive. I was just a human who, ended up with someone who was bad for me. But it completely shaped how I interact with humans, even now, like more than a decade later, and helping people understand that you get to move on. You do not have to hold on to that part of you as who you are. It does not define you. And it's okay to be angry and it's okay to be hurt, but it does not make you less than. You are not defined by your trauma in the same way that you're not defined by the best thing you do. But it's really hard to make that distinction. It is really hard to not think that, well, I deserve this one thing. I continue to deserve bad things. I think one of the things that we do a lot as humans is shut ourselves out from good opportunities, from good relationships, from good friendships, from good stuff because we've experienced the bad. And so I spend a lot of time talking with people about what it means to deserve good things. And we all deserve good things. We all deserve a soft life, a life of ease, a life that feels good, even if you've experienced moments that didn't feel like that. That does not have to be your normal. And it was never normal. I think one of the things that really bothers me, and I think it's more prevalent for me now as an adult, how many things that happen in childhood that are normalized that are actually trauma that inherently impact how you show up as an adult, right? Like I think about this all the time now because if someone said it to me now, like we might have to throw hands. But like I used to get told all the time, oh my God, you sound so white. And like I never saw that as traumatic. But now I look back and how that shaped how I showed up in high school and in college and in all of these other spaces because I thought I had to lean to whiteness because that's how people saw me. But where we don't think of those things as trauma, we just think of them as moments. But those moments are inherently trauma and they all combine on one another to create very momentous impacts on your adult life. And you have to be willing to like spend some time really sitting with them to think about what was that thing? Did that actually hurt me and I pretended it didn't? Because I guarantee if you look back 15, 20, 25 years, there are things that you wrote off as a moment that you still feel some pain about when you think today.
That's so interesting. I don't know if I ever thought about leaning towards whiteness. I was just like, okay, you guys are surprised I'm smart, but I'm not surprised. So what are we talking about next?
Well, yeah, I mean, now when people say things like, oh my God, you're so articulate. And I'm like, why is that surprising?
Right.
But, I'm biracial. So like, I think that's also a part of it. Like my mom is white. I grew up in a mixed household, but then I also grew up in New England, which is like super preppy, changing leaves, all white. And then I went to boarding school, which was also very white. And then I went to business school, which was also very white. And so I was really in these institutions that painted whiteness as the only way to be successful. Like I do not think I ever had a Black professor in college. I don't even know if looking back, I think I had one woman. And that was it. And so like the way that success is painted to you feels like it has to be white when you're in spaces where you see nothing but whiteness. And so I think that is also why I felt like I had to lean that way because it was the only thing around me.
Yeah, and I hear you, and no explanation needed. And I appreciate you sharing why and the journey of it, and that's why we're excited to have you on the show, you know what I mean? But I was just, as somebody who's had the Oreo comments and the white comments and I think about being from Alabama and how my Southern accent, whew, I remember that junk was thick, okay? but it's definitely gone now after the classes. And I was little, so I don't even remember the classes, but I know I was in a class for my speech, and now this is how it is, but I I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of people felt like that. And I did not think about the Black woman who would be told that, feeling like, even in a Black household or whatever situation, maybe I do lean more towards Avril Lavigne and Black Mayday Parade, you know what I mean, than the rap and the different stuff. And that's just what I listened to because I was in a predominantly white area. But so I was just mentioning the difference. It's interesting. Thank you for sharing.
No, for
Mhm.
sure. And I just, I think again, like if I look back to just my childhood in general, like there are so many things that I think as a child, as a teenager, like we think it's like just cutesy fun bullying or whatever. That like as an adult, you find it coming up in situations where you're like, huh, why is that moment from seventh grade here in my brain right now? And most likely it hurt you in some way and it was too hard to acknowledge that it hurt you. So you just pretended it was just a memory that you happen to have.
Mm.
Right. Maddie, I have a question because with your book coming out and with talking about sitting with yourself, like what are the tools our audience loves tools? Like what are the tools you use to unearth some of this and to look at it and to help heal some of this trauma?
So for me, I think one of the biggest things is I am a writer by nature. Like I write my feelings. And I think for me, the thing that has been the hardest, but the most helpful is actually naming my feelings. So if I go back to that thing that came up from seventh grade and I'm like, oh, that's not a memory, that was actually hurt or that was actually anger. And then peeling back, okay, well, why did that hurt me? Why did that make me feel angry? Or on the other side, like, why did that make me feel loved? Why did that make me feel happy? And really getting to the core of where things come from has been really beneficial for me. I think the other thing that for me feels really hard and has been like a very long journey is actually naming all of the shitty things I've done out loud. I think it's really easy to say all the good things you've done or all the puppies you've helped or whatever. It is not as easy to talk about the hurt that you've caused. And I think a lot of that is because we're painted this picture of like humanity is very black and white. You're either a good person or you're a bad person. The majority of us don't want to be bad people. We want to be good friends, good partners, good coworkers, good leaders, whatever it is. And so when you start to unpack these things, you're like, well, shit, does that make me a bad person? I'm not a bad person. So you go on the defensive. You do the opposite where you're like, well, I didn't actually mean that. They just took it that way. I didn't actually cause the hurt. They just were hurt because that's how they accepted that information. And you play this game with yourself of like, no, I didn't mean it like that. I didn't say that. I didn't. Instead of saying like, damn, I did this thing. It was shitty. Sit with it. Feel that. Let yourself feel shitty. Let yourself feel some shame and then let it go. And that I think is really hard because otherwise you just let it sit and sit and sit. And although you're not consciously feeling guilty, you're not consciously feeling shame, it's sitting there. It's there. It's living
Mhm.
within you.
Mhm.
I think one of the things that for me was really the hardest. So if I go back to that abusive relationship, I was like the worst version of myself. Like I am a version of me that nobody who has met me on the internet would believe existed. I was like and I guess I would say I was, but I believed I was like a staunch Republican. I believed that I only liked white men. I believed that I had to be a certain kind of Black woman to be valid. And a lot of that came from the fact that I was in an abusive relationship with someone who was like very, very, very racist. And it just made me a terrible self-hating version of myself. And when you hate yourself, it comes out to everyone. Like you take it out on everybody. But that being said, we had a very, 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 very public breakup. And I mean like BuzzFeed public. And so I had been running from this thing. Like I'd been running from being a Black woman. I very much identified as like a special biracial girl, which I thought made me very different and cool. And turns out I'm just Black. But that being said, this thing that I had run from was the only thing people knew about me. So when you looked at BuzzFeed, when you looked at BET, when you looked at every single article that came out, the only thing people knew about me was that I was Black. And so I had this very public reckoning with my identity, which I would not recommend. I would not recommend anyone do this in a public setting because I did it for you. But I had to like really come to terms with my Blackness and I had to do it pretty quickly. And then I had to sit with all of the terrible things I thought about myself. That meant I thought about other Black women. That meant I thought about other Black folks. And I had to come to terms with how harmful that is and how hurtful that is. And I will tell you, like, to this day, it makes my stomach hurt because I hate that version of myself. But I have to be honest and say that version of myself is why I'm the version of myself I am today. So I have to be grateful because she was doing what she needed to do to stay alive. And that in itself was its own chore. And the fact that I am alive is a gift. But I was doing like the best I could with the tools I had in my toolbox at the time. And so that's how you have to look at it, right? Like you have most likely done things that you look back now and you're like, oh my God. You know, and that's as a human, like even when we look at DEI practices, we'll look at 10 years from now versus 20 years ago. And we'll be like, what were we doing? Because we didn't know better. We were doing what we could do with the tools in our toolbox. And so for me, that is really the key, is like owning the things that make you feel like shit. And I'm not saying you have to go own them out loud or go make amends with the person from 7th grade, but go ahead and say them out loud to yourself because you also deserve the peace and the apology.
Yeah. And the only thing that I would like to take out is the just, because you are not just Black. You're not. You are biracial, and that's okay. You didn't choose that. That's what you are. You know.
When I say that, it's the fact that, like, so if I get pulled over, nobody knows I'm biracial. No one's like, is your mom white?
But that's not fair because I think you could tell. But they might not care. But I think
to be fair, I am my winter color right now.
Okay. I hear you.
I haven't been in the sun in a long time. But I've never met anyone that like met me, and upon meeting me, they were like, "Oh, you have a white mom." Because when I walk into a room, like I walk in Black first, like nobody's guessing. So maybe in January.
I hear you.
But I think for me, like growing up, I thought that life would be easier if I didn't identify as Black. And again, I was like 15, 16 in my early 20s, and I just didn't know what I didn't know. And there was no way for me to know what I didn't know, as many of us were all living life for the first time all together. And I say this a lot, like we're literally all winging it. Everyone you meet is winging it. The richest person you know, the teachers, the CEOs, the founders, everybody is winging something in their life because, again, we're just all here for, the first time, at least consciously for the first time.
Right. It's a grand experiment.
Right.
Some people are failing very badly.
Whew. So before we go to wisdom and action, Maddie, I have a question for you. And I appreciate the hard work you went through this reckoning. You said, I did it for you, right? I'm sorry it was so difficult. And I appreciate everything you did to come through on the other side. All right.
Oh no, I just mean I did it publicly so I can tell you not to do it.
I know. I hear what you're saying. I'm with you.
Wouldn't recommend.
What now having a different relationship with Black womanhood, what are some of your favorite things that you didn't think about before?
Oh God, there's so many. First off, curly hair. I never wore my hair curly, like for the first 25 years of my life. And don't look at it right now because I just came from the gym, so it's a little gross.
It's okay. But we love you as you are. It's okay.
Thank you. I think for me, like it's my curly hair. I'm gonna be honest. It's like this really dope body that I have. That is like a big fan for me. And in general, like as a queer woman, I also just love Black women. Yeah, like beautiful. In the real way, And now I like, for me, all I want is for other Black women and Black folks to get their bag while understanding that this is a journey and we're all at different points. And, I said this earlier, like, I actually don't have to like you to want to help you get a bag or help you move your life forward. Like, I really think we all deserve a life of ease. And I think Black women deserve it even more than the regular person, despite the fact I think everyone deserves it. I think we really deserve it. The world isn't always good to us. And the world, I think, also tries to make us dislike each other and to make us feel like we are all enemies and competition. And I have found so much community in Black women. And so I think for me, that is also the other favorite part, is there is just so much community and goodness. And no matter how many shitty, terrible people you meet in the world, there are so many good ones. And, I think one of the things I've really had to focus on the last 2.5 weeks is that there's so much bad going on, but there are so many good people, and there are so many good people trying to do good things. And so many of those people are Black women.
Yeah, because you're in Austin, Texas right now, right, Maddie?
No.
I'm
bi-coastal. So I'm always
Mm.
Okay.
somewhere between Austin and Boston, but you can mostly find me on the East Coast where it is not a red state.
Oh, because I was gonna give a shout out to Jasmine, the representative in Texas. I'm a Texas girl originally. I'm
Mhm.
now in Georgia in Atlanta, but Jasmine Clark in Texas is just rocking it and doing some really good things.
There are
Just
amazing people in Texas. Texas, and I'll be really honest, like I really love Austin. My partner and I talk about moving back full time all the time, and then we go back and forth, and then it's 2 degrees here, and I'm like, why do I live here?
right.
But I will be really honest, I was very tired of being 110 degrees for 108 days in a row.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean,
It's very,
climate change is real and
yeah.
yeah, that's same thing. My folks were in Texas and same thing when you see those numbers and hear those numbers, like when you it's not
It's
sustainable.
rough. No,
So,
especially like I really enjoy being in the gym and at the gym. And it's really hard to motivate yourself when it is that hot. But like even here, it's winter, it's definitely cold, but we don't even really get snow anymore. And
mhm.
we used to get like 10 feet over the course of a couple weeks. And so it's really, really wild here to watch how the weather changes. And of course, like, am I personally upset that we don't get snow? No. But am I globally upset that we don't get
Right.
snow? Yes.
Yep. Absolutely. I hear you.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, Maddie, so every week we ask our guests and talk about what we're doing for ourselves for that dimension. So, for emotional and mental wellness, what are you doing this week?
Okay, so you and I, we all talked before this. I'm having like the world's worst week, and the thing that is keeping me grounded in honesty is being at the gym.
Mhm.
There is something for me about moving my body and lifting heavy stuff and putting it down that makes me feel very connected with myself. And the other thing that I have done is I have intentionally tried to stop consuming things that make me feel like shit. Um,
Mhm.
my favorite example right now is so on Facebook, there are all these Facebook groups that are like, are we dating the same woman or man?
Mhm.
City. It's like, are we dating the same man? Boston. And
Yeah,
I was
yes.
in them mostly like for the tea. But then I realized I was like consuming all of these really unhealthy relationship dynamics while I myself am in a healthy relationship. And it was impacting how I thought about my own relationship, like unconsciously, despite the fact that we're good.
Yeah.
And so I just want to stop consuming things on the internet that make me feel yucky. And obviously, like you can't not consume all of it because the news is also making me feel pretty yucky.
Mhm.
But in terms of social media, trying to surround myself with things that make me feel light and lift me up and move the world forward instead of backwards.
Yes. I love that. For mine,
Cool.
I have something you said earlier, hashtag getting to the core. For emotional and mental wellness, I always try to make sure that
Mhm.
in part of my presentness, I'm really processing what's actually going on because I want to deal with it. And after we deal with it, we're going to move forward. But we're gonna deal with it. So getting to the core of it and those solutions you find, what happens when you talk about the story, like you were talking about, the clarity. I love all of that on the other side of the difficult situation. So that's for me for emotional and mental wellness this week. What about you, Christine?
Ooh, I'm thinking about it. I was writing a poem the other day because really it just came out of going outside and putting my hands in the dirt. Like I was having a horrible tech day and all my tech was down, so it meant my meetings were on my phone. And what it meant it was I could walk outside and feel the sun on my face and have this meeting outside while I was repotting or just prepping because we're still
Mm.
not where we can plant yet. But I think as we're looking at all this and paying attention so we know what we do, having those our touch points, the things that really ground us. And for me, that's nature. So I think this week, just being really conscious of getting outside every day, like stepping away from my screens or stepping away from the work
Mhm.
and and putting my hands in some dirt. So
I I want to actually hold on, get outside every day.
I'm
Can
so
you?
jealous.
right, because you're in Boston. Well, we're having a false spring, just so you know,
Oh,
Maddie. Like it was 70 something degree. Like it was ridiculous here this
it
week,
was.
and not in. like we're happy for it in this moment, but like you said, on the
Concerned.
global, like we should not be having this on in February.
Mhm.
And after, we had snow twice in Atlanta, which we don't do snow in Atlanta. We just don't. We don't know how to do it. We don't have the equipment for it. We don't. So we had some pretty cold temperatures, right? So now we're all like, woo,
Don't believe the hype, y'all. I got bone broth right now, okay? Stay
right? It's
broth
true.
up.
Stay ready.
Yes. Um, but I want to talk about that a little bit more because we were talking about get ready, get set, go last year
Hmm.
with Shaylo Glow. And I really like that mentally, right? So can you talk more about it's not time to plant yet? What do you do with your soil as a gardener?
Oh, I'm just like cleaning up. Like,
Okay.
so my pots from last year have things that have died back because of the winter. Some of my pots broke because it was so cold here this year.
Mhm,
So I'm cleaning up and
mhm,
then I'm kind of tilling the soil a little. I'm doing it
mhm,
by hand because they're
mhm,
in a container garden on the back patio. Um, and just kind of filling up and getting ready for the seeds that I'm going to plant.
mhm.
So I'm not actually planting them yet. I'm just prepping the way.
I think
And
that's beautiful.
yeah.
I think
And
it's a correlation, like, emotionally, you know what I mean? Like,
right?
before you go into this next season, like, go ahead and clean all
Prep
that.
the soil. Just
Yeah,
like Maddie was talking about, name the things,
yeah.
right? Write it
Mhm.
out,
That's good.
name it.
Yeah.
And my daddy's been so present with me. Maddie, I lost my dad in May, and it was a really big deal, and it was a really long journey. And just, he had a lot of trauma because he was a Vietnam vet, and he was always raised us like, you're gonna have to know how to do this someday, right? So when this guy got elected the first time, I was like, "Oh, don't prove my daddy right." Like, and this time it's even more present about the what's going on. And so he's very present with me, and I pulled out my seeds, and some of them were in his handwriting because
Mhm,
anytime things went down, like when the pandemic went down,
mhm,
and he was from Texas and he was an organic farmer, so he never did anything small. So when the pandemic happened, he sent me 100 gladiola bulbs to plant because we couldn't be together. And my husband, who is not a gardener, who is not like, he was like, 100, what are we gonna do with it? I'm like, we're gonna plant them because that's what you do when your daddy sends you something, you plant
mhm,
it. But it's so sweet. And that, now that he's an ancestor, just pulling out his seeds, and it's in his handwriting, that because he shipped me, he probably bought, who knows, with him 1,000 seeds, 2,000 seeds,
mhm,
and he sent me a little envelope that had lettuce written on it. And I got lettuce for 10 years. So
mhm.
it's I don't know why all that's coming up, but it's just, it keeps me grounded, and it keeps me like, chop wood, carry water in the midst of, we don't know what's about to happen. And we know the things we can do. Like, we can feed our neighbors, we can have mutual aid, we can do the work that we know how to do.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Thank you so much for sharing.
yeah.
Beautiful. Get outside every day. Yeah, I think about you when I go
Yeah, get
outside. I
outside.
was I was taking a walk the other day in these trees by this doorway. I just stopped. I was like, wow, thinking about you, thinking about looking at the beauty and stuff. So yeah, it's beautiful. Okay, Maddie. Well, you have your book coming up. Let them see you, right? Christine, I feel like that was a beautiful expression of
Right,
authenticity. Thank you
right.
so much for sharing.
Mm,
How can people find you, Maddie? They want to get connected, find out what you do. Where should they go?
Oh, you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm sometimes shadow banned, but if you type in Madison Butler, I should pop up. I'm the one with the blue hair. I'm also on TikTok, Twitter, not really Twitter anymore, but I exist there, and Threads. You can find me under Madison Amelia B or Corporate Unicorn. Both will bring me up.
Beautiful.
I love it. And we will put that in the show notes, Maddie, and we'll put a link to people so they can pre-order your book.
Mhm.
Let them see
Thank
you.
you.
Congrats. As authors
Yes.
ourselves, we know how
Mhm.
much work goes into a book.
A lot.
Congrats,
Yes.
congrats, congrats.
It's so
And
many words. I was unprepared for how many words. 60,000 words. It's
Mhm.
it's a lot of
it's a
words.
lot of words,
Good job. But you're good with words apparently, right?
right?
Hello.
I'm good with words until you have to sit down and then you're like, that was only 1,000 words.
Right.
Dang. So
Yeah.
Right?
it's been a journey for sure.
Well,
Yes.
we can't wait to read it and
I'm excited.
give you a shout out when it comes out. And
In August,
uh,
right? August
Yes.
25th, I think I saw on Amazon. Mhm.
Yeah,
ah,
I think it's like August 19th, I think. Yep.
Okay, okay. Yeah.
that's exciting.
Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for taking time out to be with us. I'm sorry your week's been so hard, and I
Yes.
hope things get better. And thanks for being connected.
Yeah, we're holding
Thank
space for you.
you. I appreciate y'all.
Absolutely.
This was fun.
Yes, yes, had such a good time. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Peace. Mm,
Such a good convo.
yeah, yeah.
Mm,
It's big, and there is so much stuff back and forth. And like you said, that's really what helps me stay angry. What can I do today? Oh, yeah,
right.
I haven't eaten. Let me eat. Let me
Right.
eat. Let me sleep. Let me drink water, or even if it's talk to the team. Dang, I didn't, post a graphic. Let me reach out to Christine, like whatever we need to do. Um, like you said before the call, doing one thing a lot of times makes me feel
Hmm.
better, and then I can put the rest of it down that I have no control over.
Right.
Yeah.
And also, like, when you get in a cycle, like this morning I was doom scrolling
Mm,
and I caught myself in a cycle. I was like, oh, I
mhm,
got to get out of this cycle. Right.
mhm,
So it was
mhm,
either go outside and I called a friend at the same
mhm,
time. And they're
mhm.
like, what are you doing? I'm like, doom scrolling and I need to stop.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, I need to stop and shift gears.
Mhm.
And my nervous system was triggered. And they were like, well, what was the thing? And I'm like,
Yeah.
was there one thing? And I
Mhm.
tracked it back.
Yeah.
Right. And it was what you and I were talking
Mhm.
about getting rid of the diversity, equity, and inclusion materials at all federal agencies. And pretty much they were given a memorandum to destroy them,
Mm.
which, of course, you know, being a child who read Fahrenheit 451 and who read all these
Mhm.
1984, it
Mhm.
immediately is like, ah,
Yep,
my nervous
especially with these.
system was just like,
Mhm. Yeah, and we don't have to go back down it, but these screens all around Atlanta, I'm like, "The screens are gonna get bigger." You know, like, the books, the screens, that's what I've been thinking about, okay?
right.
Like, but outside every day, being at the gym, working out has definitely been helping, and I know
Mm-hmm.
we're wrapping, but, like, you were talking about dooms, that we staying aware is important, but holding on to the hope is important too, y'all, and I saw this video that was talking about contracting your muscles releases a chemical of hope, so when you're laughing, when you're
Mm,
singing, when you're dancing, when you're working out, it brings
right.
hope back to your body. It also helps me release some of the anger, all that pent up energy.
Right.
I run out of my feet on the street when I'm running, but yeah, it helps.
Right, look for the thing and dancing. Like,
Mhm,
hard times, African proverb,
mhm,
hard times require furious dancing.
mhm.
And so we need to be dancing.
Yeah, every day,
So
just like we
every
talked about last
day.
year.
All right,
Okay,
friend. Anything our
yes.
listeners need to know before we wrap episode
Absolutely.
182?
Y'all, especially if you're here, right? If you're here, you're listening live, watching us live, you were probably planning on coming to the party later, the vision board party, all right? But we are pivoting. As you hear with the energy, we're like, you know what? It doesn't feel right to do it today. We're going to give you guys
Hmm.
some more time. We're going to give some more space to have more people join us. So
Hmm.
instead of having our Connected and Vision tonight from 6:30 to 8, we're going to have it on the 26th. Come join us if you want to be intentional about what you're doing this year with your dimensional wellness. We'll join a community, have a good time, share stories, share our plans, and then stay connected so we can see those things unfold the rest of this year. Also, we talked about volume 2. Volume 3 is about to open. If you know somebody who should be one of our 24 authors, let us know. If we end up having 36 extra people, let's see if we can make space for them, right? But right now we have 24 spots. If you know a dimensional expert whose story is amazing and resource should reach our audience, get them connected to Women Connected in Wisdom podcast, and we'll send out that information when we send out the invite. Yeah.
Yep. Come join
Yes.
us. Let's be
Yeah.
connected.
And we'll be live at 5 next week, y'all, for episode 182. In the
Oh,
meantime,
no. Next week's 183.
oh, it is. This is
It
82.
is.
Hello.
Today's
So they
182.
they,
Hello.
they go so quickly. Okay. Hello. But we'll be back, y'all. We'll be back next week having conversation. In the meantime, be well, be wise, be whole. Peace.